Welcome back to my channel, Fazbear's Menagerie of Madness, where I'll explore the universe of Five Nights at Freddy's and I hope in a new and unique interpretation of events. The Five Nights at Freddy's franchise, created by Scott Cawthon, is a horror universe with a myriad of narratives across games, books, and the recent film adaptation. As players and readers delve deeper into the chilling world, they encounter an evolving storyline filled with lore, hidden connections, and characters. Cawthon's unique storytelling approach has transformed the series, often revisiting and reinterpreting earlier elements to create a richer narrative. Throughout this timeline, we'll explore how seemingly minor details and characters, initially introduced in games and literature, have grown into pivotal components of the overarching story. Additionally, we will discuss the theories suggesting Cawthon's deliberate changes and additions. We will unravel the layers of mystery that define the iconic franchise and track its development from simple jump scares to the story of fear, guilt, and redemption. Scott Cawthon has significantly shifted the franchise's direction as it has evolved over the years. As new elements like animatronic design, story arcs, and character interactions are introduced, original concepts have transformed. This evolution reflects not only Cawthon's responsiveness to fan feedback, but also his desire to explore new themes. For that reason, I'll not pretend that Scott had 10 years worth of lore planned out. Instead, try to piece together the current direction of the series. This will mean that game, book, and movie lore will be combined and used together to tell a more complete timeline. Before we can start at the beginning, we need to take 2 steps forward and look at the night Charlotte died. Charlotte Emily. The events leading to Charlotte's demise in 1983 can be traced through 2 minigames that allow players to witness her fate. In the Puppets minigame, the puppet, the animatronic for her protection, cannot prevent Charlotte from leaving the safety of the pizzeria. And players can see the weighted box on top of the prize box is why the puppet fails to stop her. In Feed the Children, players are in the role of the character Fredbear, tasked with feeding pizza to the children of the diner. Fredbear, the beloved mascot of the diner, during the moments leading up to Charlotte's death, is preoccupied. Henry, who is likely wearing the costume, is engaging with the children and is oblivious to the sinister plot unfolding. In the novel The Silver Eyes, Charlotte recalls a memory of that day. The Spring Bonnie costume, a character meant to entertain children, becomes the prime suspect of the tragedy. Charlotte recalls the moment when she was taken away from the costume change room. It was only that memory that revealed that Spring Bonnie was involved. The narrative concludes that William Afton, lying in wait in the purple car, orchestrated the events to ensure both he and Spring Bonnie would evade detection by parents and staff. To the onlookers, the animatronic can move freely, while in the parking lot, William is hidden by the heavy rain and the cover of darkness. When William pulls up, Charlotte may have recognized that car before, and for a moment lets her guard down, giving William the chance to end her life. So the point that should be received from this is, William wasn't working alone. By that 2 of them work together, the pair are a greater threat. So using this information, let's step back to the events of the 4th game. The Crying Child. The events that happened at Fredbear's family diner led to the bite of 83, as well as the fate of the Afton's son. I'll be using the name Evan as the Fazbear Frights epilogues 10 and 2 in the story Real Jake spoke about Detective Larson's case looking for the previous owner of a Fazbear restaurant. This would connect the owner of the restaurant with Evan, and I'll cover this topic later. From the game, we are instantly aware that our main character, Evan, originally called the Crying Child, is fearful of the spring-lock animatronics at the diner. While we would not get the reason for his trauma, we would be introduced to the older brother Mike, who torments him constantly. Portrayed as more of a bully, Mike wears the Foxy mask and hangs out with his friends of a similar age to him. This gets him the name Foxy Bro. During this time, Father William is not active in his day-to-day activities. Co-owner of the diner Henry is wearing the spring-lock costume of Fredbear and keeps an eye on him. In the days leading up to his birthday, Evan needs the ongoing support from his favourite toy, Fredbear plush. This dialogue between the 2 has been described by some as being via a speaker, although Fredbear has this conversation while sitting on the bed of the child's room. He is not being taken with Evan and even speaks while in the presence of others. Evan would understand what a speaker is, and I find it unlikely would fall for this trick. This is why I suggest that someone is speaking through the plush, acting as an imaginary friend. They can give advice, although no speaker is involved. There is a term called mediumship that I suspect is happening. During the 5 nights, the idea of spirits communicating through objects is encountered. Animatronics can convey emotions of happiness by playing with children. Advanced Funtime animatronics even use speakers and simple talking points, although I suspect that a spirit can also use a child's favourite toy to connect with them. I am alluding to Fredbear Plush being the device that allows Evan to talk with the first victim of the series. What did he do this time? He locked you in your room again? Don't be scared, I'm here with you. He left without you? He knows that you hate it here. Tomorrow is another day. From the dialogue, we can infer that the individual cares for the child and gives some helpful advice. If this is his father, William, why not just let him know it was him? Give the child the means to respond. No, this is someone else. The situation between brothers is getting worse on Evan's birthday, as Mike and his friends lift him into the mouth of Fredbear, and while on stage, the animatronics chomps down on him. This leaves onlookers stunned by the events they had witnessed. In the latest book, the week before, we get the actual dialogue from that event. No, let me go. No, please, I don't want to. Give you a closer look? Hey, stop that. Put him down. Get back from the stage. Do not touch the bear. Crunch. While the words from brothers Mike and Evan are expected, the man's voice has not been covered before. This I am fairly sure is Henry, not in his Fredbear costume, but still running the diner. He tries to stop them, although he didn't succeed. Was it his fault? Not likely. Was he partly responsible for the safety of the child? A bit. Would the crying child's parents hold him responsible? Yes and no. In the nights that follow, the child is in recovery, as the first night features the chance appearance of either an EKG, IV drip or flower. We get the clue of what had happened. The vase is likely a connection to Elizabeth, worried about her brother's health. The other 2 items are used following a medical procedure I suspect is the bite. While we play the 4th game, switching between night and day, the solution is playing the events day first, ending with the party, then the nights. The difference in the houses now makes sense. The child is moved from his house, following the bite, to that of another person to care for him while William is busy with the franchise. Now with the fear of all animatronics, his friends, the toys, are now monsters as well. The nightmares affect him after the bite. His friend, Fredbear Plush, was still there helping him. Always the friend he needs. While the idea of the speaker in the toy has been theorized, it's likely it couldn't work when the child leaves the room. This voice, I suspect, is the voice of a spirit channeled through the plush and acting like an imaginary friend to the boy. This voice could have a connection to the incident of the trauma the child has. Spring Bonnie. For the first event of the timeline, we need to find the possible reason why Crying Child was afraid. We also need to find the connection to Fredbear Plush and possibly a reason to why William has taken the lives of so many. Any event that caused the Crying Child's trauma has happened before the 4th game. The child is afraid and is prompted to run away from the diner. Even when alone in parts and service, with only the animatronics, he is afraid. From the child's reaction to the spring-lock Fredbear, and by having no reaction to his friends, the animatronic plushes, we can assume he is singling out the spring-lock costumes. Henry is friend to the Afton family at the time. The costume he wears might be the reason for the child's fear. While seeing his father, the purple guy, would help an employee into the costume, the child is still afraid. He can still safely assume that the springlocks have a part in this, even though his friend Fredbear Plush is based on one. The springlocks have a history beyond just being entertainment for children. Both William Afton and Phone Guy have information about the terrible side of the costumes. Phone Guy's recording from the 3rd game offer a brief history during the time he was responsible for training staff in wearing the costume suits. Welcome to your new career as a performer/entertainer for Freddy Fazbear Pizza. These tapes will provide you with much needed information on how to handle/climb into/climb out of the mascot costumes. Right now we have 2 specially designed suits that double as both animatronic and suit, so please pay close attention while learning how to operate these suits, as accidents/injury/death/irreparable and grotesque maiming can occur. This happened during his time at Freddy Fazbear's Pizza, although as time went on, it became known of the dangers of the costumes and management stopped their use. After learning of an unfortunate incident at the sister location involving multiple and simultaneous spring-lock failures, the company has deemed the suits temporarily unfit for employees. This event would have happened during the years 1983 to 1987, where Phone Guy was training the staff who would entertain the customers. The sister location he speaks of is likely the franchise Fredbear's Family Diner. The failure would have happened prior to his time at the restaurant, which understandably means he was unaware of the dangers when he was training others in their use. Within the Silver Eyes novel, William explains to Carlton, if you trigger those spring locks, two things will happen. First, all the locks will snap right into you, making deep cuts all over your body. All that sharp steel and hard plastics will instantly be driven into your body. You will die, but it will be slow. You will know you're dying for long, long minutes. You'll try to scream, but you will be unable to. Your vocal cords will be severed, and your lungs will fill with your own blood until you drown. This event is meant to convey a fear in Carlton as William removes the Spring Bonnie costume to show his scars. Although William was telling Carlton of the costume's flaws, his vocal cords seemed just fine now. Charlie turned, following the line of sight of William, then suddenly recoiled. On the table along the wall sat a rabbit's head. That's it. You want this. Charlie stood and approached the mask. You need this? Charlie placed it over his head. My dad trusted you. What did you do to him? Charlie said. I helped him create. The voice came from inside the mask, but it was not Dave's, not the pitiful, sour tone they would have recognized. The voice of the rabbit was smooth and rich, almost musical. It was confident, somehow reassuring, a voice that might convince you of almost anything. Yet another separation between Spring Bonnie and William, as well as their personality change. So if we assume the diner is the location of the crying child's trauma and the spring locks are the cause, then what story could it tell? The springlock failure at the diner could give us less suspects than the Freddy's restaurant. Both William and Henry would have known the likely event, as they seemed to internalise the event and not let the broader public know. Even Sheriff Burke of Hurricane didn't know very much about the pair. The individual will be connected to Henry, William and the crying child. Based on the limited characters available, the absence of a character could be the clue. Mrs. Afton's fate has never been confirmed, only speculated, even covered up from the therapy CDs that would only exist decades later. William Afton then, wrong again. You've made me one of my creations. My name is Springtrap. I'm more than Afton ever was and far more than Henry. If his mother was looking out for Evan, then using the Spring Bonnie costume to entertain him is possible. By wearing the costume and dancing and singing, the child would hold on to his favourite toy, Fredbear plush. During the happy moment, the spring locks fail. The locks snap right into her, making deep cuts. She would only have minutes before her death is unavoidable. She would try and scream, but would be unable to. The sharp steel and hard plastics will sever her vocal cords, and then her lungs will fill with blood. And her young son, for whom the act was for, would not leave or go for help, frozen still out of fear. Don't you remember what you saw? The exit is the other way. Hurry and leave. 1983. With a possible identity for the one who haunts Spring Bonnie in place, we can now go through the timeline and fill in the blanks to explain the reasons and actions for many characters. Following the multiple and simultaneous springlock failures at the diner, William and Henry would decide to continue using the springlock costumes. William focusing his attention on his Afton Robotics company and catering to the newly rebranded company Fazbear Entertainment, formerly Fazbear Enterprises. Henry would continue to wear his costume, raise his son and daughter with his wife, and run the diner. The failure of the springlock costumes would weigh heavily on Henry as it was his invention. Following the loss of his mother, Evan was being tormented by his older brother. His next birthday would have him spend it at the diner. Of course it would. Small town, fewer people, and his father part owns it. The diner would also gain a new character, Spring Bonnie. We understand from stories like Alone Together that spirits won't move on if they have unresolved issues. The recovery of her son after seeing her passing has kept her there. During the fourth game, the Fredbear plush is constantly talking with the child and giving him advice to calm him down and keep him safe. What did he do this time? He locked you in your room again? Don't be scared, I'm here with you. He left you without you? He knows you hate it here. Tomorrow is another day. This, I suspect, is a mother guiding her son. On the day of his birthday, Spring Bonnie is on stage with a front row seat of the events between Mike and the crying child. No, let him go. No, please, I don't want to. Give you a closer look? A mother watched it happen. And where was Henry at this time? Well, not stopping it from happening. Hey, stop that. Put him down. Get back from the stage. Do not touch the bear. She was on stage, watching it happen and watching Henry not stopping it. Midnight Motorist. Following the bite of 83, many theorists are of the opinion that Evan dies. I am not of that opinion. As Mike's words of apologies are heard at the end of the game, I suspect that day sessions are followed by the night. On the first night, there is a chance of seeing medical equipment. This would be required after the bite. During the night, Evan is coping with his friends being monsters, a clear change from how he viewed them during the day. Only his friend, Fredbear Plush, is unchanged. Over the following nights, the child is trying to survive during his recovery, although he's not going well. Plagued by memories he can't be fixed. Cue Midnight Motorist. On the night that Nightmare Fredbear appears, Henry is making his way home from the diner. The golden yellow sprite, I would suspect, is indicating the character's origin. Symbolic of the Fredbear costume he wore, Henry is shown in the golden yellow, just like his animatronic character. This would also go to explain why William is reflected in purple. Bonnie has traditionally been a purple colour. On this dark and rainy night, the house has already been visited by an animatronic. 3 toes left in the soil outside the house's rear window. Spring Bonnie has been here to keep an eye on Evan. Henry, who would be going through some trauma of his own, is using alcohol at the local juniors bar to help him forget. Although on this night, following a pattern of behaviour, he's been turned away. Not even allowed to get a word in, the bouncer turns him away. Upon arriving home, Mike Afton, who Henry is also caring for, has become protective of his brother in the back bedroom. This is also a pattern of behaviour, as Mike's words to protect his brother did not wait for Henry to talk. When Henry goes to the bedroom, he knows that a closed door was the result of Evan holding the door shut. Banging on the door, Henry loses his composure and wants to be let in. The demeanour of Henry has clearly been broken these past few days. This was the second time his Springlock costumes had hurt someone, and both from the same family. Inside the bedroom, Evan is avoiding being attacked by Nightmare Fredbear. Having come down the hall and banging on the door, what's seen in shadows is easily misunderstood in the mind of a child. Having avoided the monster, the child runs to the right, breaks the window, and escapes. Upon further investigation outside the property, Henry has discovered the child has broken out, going to that place again, where his mother lies, the local graveyard. Henry can't blame him for this, but Henry would have stern words for him when he returns. FNAF World. To save her son, Mrs. Afton needed to remove the problem afflicting Evan. The solution? Make him forget. This is a powerful weapon when used by the wrong people. The child's memories would be removed for the time being. As the quote goes, some things are best left forgotten for now. During the events of FNAF World, Evan needs to play through the monsters he remembers. Represented as a child's game, this I suspect are the dreams and imagination. His friend, Fredbear Plush, helps him through, although success means defeating his monsters. Once he has defeated all the memories, the last ones can be removed. This would ultimately mean the child would forget a large portion of his childhood, although he can recover. The memories that would need to be removed by his mother would include his friends, the plush dolls, and herself. She would make the sacrifice to be forgotten by him so he could stand a chance to growing up normal. Charlotte. The sensation of being disconnected would be troubling on a mother. With Evan kept away from the restaurant and the animatronics, Mrs. Afton's focus changed to one of revenge. Henry had caused this on her family. Henry needed to suffer for that loss. In the cover of night, she and William would ensure Henry would know what it feels like. Circus Baby's Pizza World. While the commotion of the diner is going on, William is trying to get another franchise up and running, Circus Baby's Pizza World. With daughter Elizabeth with him, they are opening the franchise with the most advanced animatronics to date, the Fun Times. These animatronics are advanced for various reasons. Speakers are built in to allow them to talk and sing for the customers. The shiny panels are easy to clean. Baby herself can inflate balloons from helium tanks within her body. As well as a cupcake dispenser, Circus Baby is the star of the show. Elizabeth thinks that. Any chance she gets to get closer to her, she takes. On the opening day of the restaurant, Ballora, the ballerina animatronic, would follow a customer out of the restaurant. glasses the customer had with her belonged to Bellora's performance, and that is what led to Bellora's departure. When the bag was stolen, Bellora continued to follow. Why this is important to know is that Bellora was invisible when this happened. The use of light to fool the brain into not seeing the details that aren't there is with the use of the illusion discs. Bellora seemed to have a system that, when looked at, using special glasses supplied by the restaurant, allow her to be seen as a hologram. This act would be a major technological draw for the franchise and Fazbear Entertainment, although Bellora left, leaving the staff to scramble around in a group to search for her. Other animatronics such as Circus Baby would be covered so to deter customers from engaging with them. That was until Elizabeth took advantage of the situation. Coming down from where she was sleeping, Bellora's action gave her the opening. Pulling the sheet off Baby, Elizabeth would gaze up at her favourite animatronic. But something would happen. Baby couldn't move. Having spent the day counting the children who came into her room, Baby could only stop and stare at the one single child in front of her. Extending an ice cream for the girl, she stepped closer. Once close enough, Baby's claw would grasp the child and draw her into the animatronic's body. Two more children entered the room, although they couldn't hear the girls scream over their own laughter. I was covered in glitter. I smelt like birthday cake. There was 2, then 3, then 5, then 4. I can do something special. Do you know that? I can make ice cream. Although I only did it once. There was 4, then 3, then 2, then 1. Something happened when there was a 1. A little girl standing by herself. I was no longer myself. And I stopped singing. My stomach opened and there was ice cream. I couldn't move. At least, not until she stepped closer. There was screaming for a moment, but only for a moment. Then other children rushed in again, but they couldn't hear her over the sounds of her own excitement. I still hear her sometimes. Why did that happen? So what could William do? He closed the restaurant, blaming a gas leak for the building's old design. He would have the animatronics moved under the cover of night to a storage facility. He would, I suggest, also declare his daughter missing during the commotion of that first and only day the restaurant was in operation. Henry must feel devastated of what his friend William was going through. The pair now shared the loss of their only daughter. The new Charlotte. With two families broken by what had happened, Henry decided that creating a solution was what was needed. With Fredbear's family diner closed and abandoned by Henry, he focused his attention on the replacement daughter. While it is not clear how Henry discovered that his daughter's favourite doll was still haunted with her spirit, Henry used the doll effectively, creating a series of animatronics that could walk, talk and bleed, as well as appear human. Henry could give his daughter the means to live again. His wife was not on board with his plan and took their son Sammy and left. First appearing in Hurricane, months after losing her, Henry was joined by Charlie. At 5 years of age, she was 2 years older than Charlotte. Only the Aftons would know that this was not the true daughter of Henry, although no one was speaking. Now I will have to include the movie in this timeline, in particular William's daughter Vanessa. From the novel adaptation of the movie, we learn a great deal about Vanessa's changing eye colour. Her emotional responses seem to reflect in either light or dark blue. This immediately should have us thinking that she is an animatronic, in particular one of Henry's animatronics with the illusion disc. So could this happen? Yes. While I'm not suggesting this was the plan from 10 years ago, Scott could make this work with the current timeline. Had Henry had seen William grieving the same way his own, then connecting William with Elizabeth could start the healing process the same way. If Elizabeth had a toy plush similar to Charlotte, say a Circus Baby plush, then perhaps Elizabeth could be connected to an animatronic, say Vanessa. William would be aware of where Elizabeth's body is, therefore he would know that the soul had not moved on, and could make that connection. This is something I suspect Henry did not know, as Henry would only reconnect with Puppet decades later for Pizzeria Simulator. Both Henry and William would be able to connect with their daughters, even if Henry was starting to have doubts. 1985. This was the year that many things happened. This was when the core animatronics of Freddy, Bonnie, Chica, Foxy and Fredbear got haunted by the child victims. A visitor from the future, Oswald, would draw out Spring Bonnie during this event. This was when Charlotte, within Puppet, was given the chance to save one soul but failed. At Freddy Fazbear's Pizza in Hurricane, Henry was running the franchise. The closure of the diner had meant that Fredbear and Spring Bonnie was moved to the new location. The phone guy, who we now know as Ralph, was acting as manager and training the staff. On the third day, Oswald had journeyed back to spend the day with his friends. Was the day Spring Bonnie started collecting the victims in the room adjacent to Foxy Cove. While there, 6 children were collected. Oswald avoided being the 7th by using the ball pit that allowed him to travel between time periods. Remaining at the restaurant was Charlie and John and their friends. On the main stage, the core animatronics were acting erratically. Their movements were sped up like they were overpowered. While John and his friends were focused on the stage, their friend Michael Brooks appeared behind them next to Fredbear. John would notice and turn around, but then, distracted by those on stage, would shift his focus. Once he turned back, Michael and Fredbear were gone. Prior to this, Spring Bonnie was collecting the children and brought them to the private room in back near Foxy Cove. Susie was collected while playing an arcade machine. Gabriel would go to the aid of a friend, although it didn't save his friend from Spring Bonnie. This was the year that Michael Brooks had gone missing. In 1995 was the 10-year anniversary. From the Candy Cadet story about the young woman, 5 children and the keys, this story best represents the 1985 events. I found the story best describes Charlotte as the young woman, Gabriel, Jeremy, Susie, Fritz and Cassidy as the 5 children, and the key being the way to find a resolution and move on to the afterlife. When Charlotte tries to save all the children, she fails, and condemns them all to the prisons of the animatronic costumes. This failure, I suggest, was that Old Man Consequences gave her the method to show them their fate. This is when a spirit moves on by accepting the consequences of their death. When Charlotte tried to deliver all 5 children the method, none of them was able to make use of them. Charlotte, troubled by failing to save even one, I would suggest, remain the protector for the 5 children. The only child of the group to not fall under the protection was Michael Brooks. From the minigame Foxy Go Go Go, William Afton as Purple Guy was in the room that Foxy was in when the children were all bound up. As Foxy was likely going on stage the same time every hour, it was poor luck that Foxy would encounter William. William, I would suggest, had already moved one of the bodies into Fredbear. That was Michael. This made him different to the others and likely more aware. This appearance in the restaurant behind John was a call for help, signalling where he was. The commotion would empty the restaurant as the town sheriff's department would arrive on scene. 5 bodies in the back, 1 missing child, 1 missing mascot uniform, the remaining staff confused about what had happened. William was there to talk to the sheriff. The deputies would be looking for the staff member who wore the costume. Spring Bonnie would go missing until the following day. 1987. 2 years later, the restaurant is remarkably still in business. Rumours have ensured that the reputation of Fazbear Entertainment had remained questionable. In the months leading up to the restaurant's closure are the events of the missing children's incident. From the newspaper articles, we understand that 2 children are involved, then revised to 5. The first of the newspaper articles spoke about the events in June, when the first 2 children were involved. With Jeremy's paycheck being dated in October, we can tell several months have passed and it is still a big topic to talk about. Phone Guy's mention of not letting in previous employees seems to focus on the investigation centered on William Afton. The investigation was directed at a man dressed in a cartoon mascot costume, luring them into the back room, with the bodies never being found, although Deputy Burke knew William was responsible. While this event was mentioned in the earlier games, it was considered by the community to involve Gabriel, Jeremy, Susie, Fritz and Cassidy, although I suspect the events in 1985 involved the core animatronics. For me, 1987 represents a second attempt to capture more souls and trap them in the restaurant. The group of 1987 would end up capturing individuals such as Andrew, who we would hear about during the Fazbear Frights stories. The Candy Cadet story involving the boy, snake and kittens I suspect belong to the 1987 missing children's incident. The snake, described as being kept in a metal cage, would be Spring Bonnie. The boy is William, naive to the consequences of his actions. The kittens are the children. When the story is read that way, William couldn't bring himself to get rid of Spring Bonnie. Upon finding 5 children, he kept them contained behind the locked doors of the restaurants. He knew that Spring Bonnie would do, but still left. 5 nights later, he collected the remains and found places for them in the restaurant. The newspaper mentions, while video surveillance identifies the man responsible and led to his capture the following morning, police think the suspect dressed as a mascot to earn the children's trust. The video didn't show William committing the crime, only making him the last person to come and go from the restaurant. As the animatronics are not suspects, the person who wore the spring lock costume would be that suspect. By then, William hasn't been a staff member since the days of the diner. I also suspect that Toy Chica was acting on Spring Bonnie's behalf. From the animated Toy Chica's The High School Years, we get the rundown on how Chica would get the animatronics' attention. This, I suspect, is where the souls of the children were stored away. The order is Foxy, Toy Freddy, Wolf, Toy Bonnie, Toy Foxy, Puppet, and Pig Patch. As Freddy, Bonnie, and Chica were on stage in 1985 acting erratically, they would be stored away backstage. The reason for Toy Chica's being involved could be connected with one line of dialogue. "Dear Diary, things didn't work out as I'd hoped, and once again I left with nothing but a broken heart. But tomorrow is another day, and I just know that there's a guy out there that's right for me." Did you catch that one line? Tomorrow is another day. That line is from Fredbear 4 years ago. This would connect Toy Chica with Fredbear and I suspect Spring Bonnie. Bite of 87. By the time the restaurant and the staff had come to terms with William Afton's involvement in the missing children's incident, the restaurant was wrapping up their last birthday party event. Night guard Jeremy Fitzgerald was scheduled to attend in uniform, with instructions to stay close to the animatronics. This would not help him as the Bite of 87 would happen, leaving Jeremy with an injury to his frontal lobe. This event has no information to go by other than what we can assume happened between Jeremy and the animatronics. Many theorists have guessed who was the culprit, although in 10 years none of them have been confirmed by series creator. I myself have suggested that Chica, or now Withered Chica. This idea has come from the story Coming Home, where we can find that Susie has a sister, Samantha, and the pair shared a doll, Gretchen. Gretchen was reunited with Samantha, to which would keep the bond between the sisters, similar to how Evan had Fredbear plush. As news of the restaurant's closure spreading through the news of the town, I suspect Samantha would go to see her sister for the last time, or until the restaurant opens again. While there, Samantha would be communicating to her sister, Susie. Scared, that would lead the older animatronics to attack whomever was the culprit. The guard, Jeremy perhaps. This theory is based entirely on motivation of existing characters and have no facts pointing us towards Chica's involvement. Although one thing is for sure, this act would close down the restaurant. At this point, Henry was in trouble. 2 incidents where he was in charge of the staff at the restaurant he managed. This would be bad for him as he was losing his composure around Charlie. With the closure of the restaurant, he would make the difficult decision to leave Charlie with his sister Jen and hide himself away somewhere where he could find peace. I suspect he went to manage Circus Baby's rental facility. We'll get to that later in the timeline. Charlie would not understand her father abandoning her like she thought her mother had, so Henry had to stage his death by one of the animatronics. As we are aware, he returns decades later. I don't think it was him who died. Henry was the only one who could make animatronics that walked, talked, and bled like a human, and with illusion discs, they could look like him as well. I suspect he made one more for himself to take the knife. Cast off into the grave beside his daughter's grave, the animatronic's loss would be, at the very least, let Charlie know she wasn't abandoned. Now guardian Aunt Jen would raise Charlie one town over. Now she was disconnected from the restaurant and the other animatronics, she could live her life away from her father's troubled past. Phone Guy. With the release of the interactive novel the week before, we now have additional information about what our phone guy was doing in the events leading up to the first game. Some information we received is that phone guy, named Ralph now, dies on the 6th day working the night shift. Although the following week he would leave messages for any future guards to help them through their shifts. How could that be? On night 4, we can acquire the ticket with the numbers 2014. On night 5, by using the code on the ticket, we can access the voicemail and get a message from junior reporter Bronwyn. Learning that she had broken into the restaurant on night 2 and encountered Bonnie, Ralph convinced himself to return for the 6th night to stop the animatronics. On night 6, Golden Freddy would face off with Ralph, which results in Ralph losing consciousness and ending up in a costume in the parts and services room. Instructions then include starting over with the phone. While not explicitly mentioned, we also have the code remembered. This new week allows Ralph to use the phone to distract or skip confrontations with the animatronics. The last thing for him to do is to leave messages for the next guard, just like a tutorial. Upon second playthrough, it should be noted that Ralph has likely died. Replaying his last week with the phone couldn't physically happen. Bronwyn didn't lose her phone until the second night. This also helps us to cover why Bronwyn made the phone call on night 5 after encountering Bonnie on night 2. She had died also. Thinking through the timeline for Ralph and Bronwyn was only required until she gave Ralph the information to get him to come back for the 6th night. Ralph played through the following week to give the tutorial messages to the next security guard. Ralph was kept around spiritually within his memories so he could share those hints on how to survive the animatronics. What Ralph was doing was ensuring the wave of new guards coming to the restaurant would be able to play with the children. It should also be mentioned that Ralph didn't necessarily leave the message for Mike Schmidt that same week. It's just as likely that Ralph's messages have been played over and over for all the guards for years. There's no information from Fazbear Entertainment that they would be called. Even the movie had minimal instructions from Steve Raglan. During this same time, inside the Circus Babies rental facility, a teenager called Rory is going through the same night over and over again. Rory is avoiding nightmare animatronics and is showing a constant fear for his safety. While he would sometimes learn that the night isn't what he thought, that instead of nightmares he's going through a hallucination, Rory would repeat that night. I suspect that this fear during this event was being collected by a small Fredbear plush located in the observation room beside his bedroom. This plush was Evan's own toy, but is only now sharing with Rory the memories of 10 years ago. Rory has experienced the memories of Evan, and while this happens, is infusing the plush with the emotion of fear. This emotion would power the plush for a future event. Even when Rory wants to escape, a voice convinces him not to, a voice that can convince him of almost anything. Mike and Vanessa. By the time 1993 came around, Mike Schmidt is searching for any job to pay the bills. Within the FNAF movie, we get the story of Mike, who has lost his younger brother Garrett. He also has a younger sister Abby, who he looks after following the departure of his father and the passing of their mother. Desperation after starting a fight as a mall security guard leads Mike to get a job in security at Freddy Fazbear's restaurant. While the restaurant has remained closed to the public for around 6 years, a guard is required on site. The job was offered by Steve Raglan, whom we later find out is William Afton, using a false name. While at the restaurant, Mike dreams of the day he lost his brother. While the spirits within Golden Freddy and the 4 animatronics visit his dreams and offer information in exchange for his sister's soul, Mike comes to realize the lengths that the spirits within Golden Freddy would go to and opposes the deal. During this time, Vanessa is stepping in to keep tabs on Mike and guide him to make certain decisions. Vanessa, who I've previously mentioned could be Elizabeth, controlled an animatronic similar to Henry's creation of Charlie. I've also outlined in a previous video my suspicions that Garrett had likely taken the place of Elizabeth to join the animatronics. I suspect William had faced with a similar situation from Golden Freddy and offered another children in her place. Elizabeth was the one the animatronics wanted, and William offered Garrett. While this is a speculative theory, it's available to watch in your own time. By the end of the movie, William would get spring-locked and left in the back room of the restaurant. William was in pain but didn't die in that back room. Follow me. One of the less discussed elements in the FNAF universe is the Immortal and the Restless soap opera. While favoured by Mike Afton later in the timeline, it gives a clue to William's past that few have looked over. One of the characters from the show is Clara, the distressed mistress of Vlad. This topic is first raised in a video by YouTuber Kiki Lala, where she discusses the theory that William, Vlad's parallel, could have had a child to Clara's parallel. This idea is about the fourth Afton child, and when I looked over the topic, I discovered the potential clue when Vlad said he was too old to have a child. This information, applied to William, would put this event later than his other children. This year would be before 1995 and the Silver Eyes, as William would be seriously injured and would struggle to walk. I would therefore suggest if William did have a fourth child, the third son would be born to a different mother in the 1990s. This could become a loose thread that Scott goes back to in the future, although I will suggest that a child born in 1990 would be around 40 years old when the Pizzaplex opens. Following Mike Schmidt's time at the restaurant, William could ensure no other guards would be sent there. William had another goal, to recover pieces of the remaining animatronics and begin his experiments on Remnant. In the minigame Follow Me, William would journey back into the restaurant he had recently escaped. The animatronics were unable to go into the back room where William was, due to the digital map the animatronics had that did not include the room. William was safe from the animatronics. Shadow Freddy would direct the spirits to William's location, though did not know the animatronics couldn't enter the room. Originally I thought Shadow Freddy could be the phone guy, although he knew about such a restriction. For some time since, I didn't have an answer and started to suspect the character didn't exist in Scott's vision for the series. Since the release of the week before, I now suspect Bronwyn became that spirit. Fredbear was where her body was kept. The action of redirecting the spirit children to the one who was responsible for their situation would help the children move on. Bronwyn tried to help. Once William started the dismantling process, the spirits of the children left their animatronics and cornered William in the back room. Forced to enter the Spring Bonnie costume again, William would be spring-locked yet again and left alone in the back room. In the day that follows, I suggest William would once again get himself out of the costume and plan his return. Charlie. 10 years after the events of 1985, Charlie, John, Jessica and Carlton and their friends would journey back to the hurricane. 10 years had passed and Michael Brooks' parents, Donald and Joan, had no new leads on the whereabouts of their son. With the history that William was connected to the missing children's incident 2 years later, many would believe Michael's disappearance to be permanent. As parents discussed the scholarship's role in remembering Michael, his friends would journey to the abandoned restaurant, now entombed within a partially constructed shopping centre, to see the location of the event. Within the search of the shopping centre, they would be approached by security guard Dave Miller. Dave would be discovered to be William Afton before the end of the story, and Charlie would get the chance to interrogate him. This would be the first time in over 6 years that William had seen Henry's robot daughter. After Henry was reported deceased by one of his creations, Henry had left her alone. But now, there she was again. The very important chapters 9 to 11 will give us information very important to the overarching story of the Springlock costumes. When Carlton is questioned by William, he was told about the effects of a Springlock failure: lungs, vocal cords, scarring, and more importantly, death. This discussion happens 2 books before William injects Carlton with Remnant, likely the first use of the Remnant injection. So as I've discussed earlier, William showed his own Springlock event while telling Carlton about the fatal nature of the first Springlock event. When Charlie and John interrogate William later on, William would need to wear the costume head of Spring Bonnie to continue with the questions. William would go through a change. Posture, tone of voice, personality, someone new took over. Not the pitiful, sour tone they would have recognized. The voice of the rabbit was smooth and rich, almost musical. It was confident, somehow reassuring, a voice that might convince you of almost anything. Charlie was confronted by someone who saw themselves better than Afton and Henry. This is who I found to be Mrs. Afton. I helped him create. You imprison them. They are home with me, their happiest day. And what makes you think they won't kill you? Because I am one of them. William wasn't talking then. He would end up being springlocked again by Charlie, then dragged away, only to get out again. My name is Springtrap. In the months that followed Charlie's time back in Hurricane, she had started college with the interest in robots similar to her father. She was brought back to Hurricane when Sheriff Burke tells her of a new series of deaths that could be connected to her last run-in with William. During her time back in Hurricane, it is known that John was with a construction company in the process of demolishing the old restaurant, only to have that work stop when bad weather called away the work crew, resulting in the works being left incomplete. When Jessica and Charlie go to the abandoned restaurant, they discover in the back room a dead-bolted door to the floor. Within it, they find William within the Spring Bonnie spring-lock costume. They can see the flesh rotting, although cannot detect the decay. The pair try to remove a piece of the suit, although Charlie gets nauseous, so they stop their attempt and leave. I would consider the lack of decay coming from a lack of smell. While not brought up again in the book, we discover in the next story that the trapped man was only an image created by an illusion disc. This is not William. The tampering of the costume to remove a piece could result in a problem in the illusion disc. Illusion discs that are not calibrated correctly cause nausea for those around. During the Silver Eyes, Ella was given a disc not intended for her, and everyone around got sick. Even if the animatronic was not William, it was an image of William, right? Well, I did a video on that talking about the 2 Spring Bonnie costumes that exist in universe. From this video, I've shown how, by using the graphics novel of the Silver Eyes, etc., you can see the use of 2 designs of Spring Bonnie. I spoke about how William's version was similar to Fredbear, while the other version was similar to the one we see in the 3rd game. This would go to explain how Jessica and Charlie could be seeing a man trapped in the Spring Bonnie, while also being the animatronic from the 4th closet, as well as being a different costume to what William was trapped in. William was spring-locked and escaped. While the animatronic in the restaurant did show a man trapped in the costume, it wasn't William. During the book the week before, if on night 6 we go from page 206 to 207, we will collect Bronwyn's phone, allowing you to confront Golden Freddy later, and then repeat the week. Although if we go from page 206 to 227, you'll find Bronwyn's body in the Golden Freddy costume. She died, and the Bonnie would do the same to you, while holding another Bonnie's head. This suggests the only way to leave messages for future guards was to not investigate the odor in the Golden Freddy and to not remove Bronwyn's body. On the second time playing through, on night 5, by using the phone on page 183 will lead to Phone Guy's capture. On page 187, after leaving the last phone message you'll get. When you come to, it's dark. You can't move your head, but through 2 small eye holes, you can just make out what appears to be the repair shop behind the stage. I'm okay? You wonder? Something smells bad. It might be you. It's me. Why can't you move your head? Your hands? I'm not okay. All your choices have led to here, and now you're out of options. The only thing to do is wait. The person who I think is in the costume, the one the illusion disc is showing, was Phone Guy. The new animatronics that would surface during the following days would be called the Twisted Ones. They would incorporate illusion discs similar to which Henry had used and Williams' Afton Robotics company produced. These discs were now modified to cause fear in those who saw them. 4 animatronics, larger than the ones from the restaurant, and with an appearance more monster than machine, all of whom seem to be working for Spring Bonnie. The animatronics are described as a crude metal frame was covered with a layer of gelatinous plastic, giving it an organic appearance, almost embryonic. They can be damaged, and their shape-shifting abilities disabled. While using their illusion disc, the animatronics appear as monsters. Announcing itself as Springtrap, the haunted animatronic would make its escape. The twisted animatronics would be defeated by other animatronics haunted by the spirits from 1985, and Charlie would lose her life to the Twisted Freddy. The last scene from the book includes the survivors gathering at the diner only to be greeted again by Charlie. Elizabeth Afton. Shortly after Charlie's return, her friends couldn't quite get their lives back on track. It gets exposed that Charlie is an animatronic built by Henry. Following Charlotte's death at the diner in 1983, Henry built 4 animatronics for Charlotte's soul to control. This control came via her favourite doll, Ella, being contained within the stomach cavity of the animatronic. While the reasons how Henry came upon to learn this process is unknown to the community, the doll placed inside the animatronic does connect with the soul of Charlotte. Even as a spirit, Charlotte could live on. Charlotte has been actively interacting with a Charlie bot for the past decade and experiencing life. John was also right about Charlie. She was actually Elizabeth Afton, daughter of William, in an arrangement not too dissimilar to Charlotte's. Elizabeth's soul could be using a doll similar to Ella while still in baby, while Charlotte's soul was in puppet. This arrangement meant that Elizabeth could spend time in public, running the restaurant, while William was surviving his injuries in the back room. Elizabeth could conduct surgery on William to implant animatronic parts within his body. This was likely because the spiritual energy connecting with haunting would ensure he survived. This use of parts would also lead to experimenting with remnant, the liquid form of the haunted alloy. Elizabeth would be sent on errands such as to put an end to the life of Henry's sister, Jen. Jen knew about Charlie and would be tasked with shifting the doll between the animatronics, after Henry was no longer a part of Charlie's life. During the final confrontation with William, Carlton would be injected with remnant. Once Carlton collapsed, William would assume the test was a failure. Carlton, although, was with the spirits of the children from 1985. Michael Brooks was there to get Carlton's help, and by collecting the memories of the children in the form of pictures, the children would throw William into the fire of the furnace. Charlie at this time would be with Elizabeth. Elizabeth was sharing with Charlie their origins, with Charlie being the embodiment of Charlotte and Elizabeth being the victim of Circus Baby. Charlie would trigger an animatronic to drive a blade through the pair of them, damaging the pair. Charlie would assume control of one animatronic body, while Elizabeth was likely forced back into Circus Baby. This would mean that Elizabeth has twice lost control of her animatronic body, once with Vanessa in the movie and again with Charlie's adult form. This is likely not the original plan when the fourth closet was written, although now I think it still works. William being thrown into the fire would not be the end of him, as the augmented parts within him have contained Andrew. William would be kept alive by Andrew for many years, following this until their arrival at the Fazbear distribution centre. Her father didn't even see what happened between her and Charlie. Elizabeth is in Circus Baby now, waiting. The real Jake and Uncle Mike. Now that most of the Afton family are unable to act, the two brothers are living their lives away from the chaos, Mike in Europe and Evan in the States. This information comes from the Fazbear Frights books. By using Epilogue 10 from the Fazbear Frights, we get that Detective Lawson was investigating previous owners of the Fazbear franchise. The detective discovers the address of a small craftsman-style house previously owned by a restaurant owner. In Epilogue 2, the detective visits the home and meets Margie. She lives in the house now, remembering the boy she once cared for and his father. From the story The Real Jake, set before the detective's investigation, Evan has been living in a small craftsman-style home with son Jake. As serving overseas in the armed forces had kept Evan away, housekeeper Margie has been Jake's live-in carer. Jake's mother Roxanne had died in a car accident years ago, leaving Evan to rely exclusively on Margie's care of his son. Within the story, we learn that Uncle Mike is living in Europe and rarely gets to see his nephew. Mike doesn't show emotions, thinking more about a child's dirty fingers rather than a hug. This differs from Evan, who is considered normal and friendly. Margie does care for the man and Jake. Mike and Evan are referred to as remaining family members, which is made harder when Evan dies overseas within 24 hours of Jake's death at home. Margie is distraught. Mike hands ownership of the house to Margie before the detective's visit. The connection to the Aftons is through the restaurant's ownership. Mike and Evan, being the remaining brothers, indicate that William is gone or lost. Elizabeth isn't mentioned, and that works with Elizabeth and the Circus Baby Pizza World. Jake would go on to haunt a small stuffed toy called Simon, and it is alluded that Jake leaves the building to start a new adventure. Something that caught my eye was Mike's living in Europe. Many theorists have taken the idea that Mike worked at the FNAF 1 and 2 locations. This was likely due to the mention of odour. Although retrospectively, in 1987, the missing children would be hidden around the restaurant. The airflow centered around the guard's office. In 1993, from the book The Week Before, we learned the animatronics are playing with people. Bronwyn at one point did end up in Golden Freddy costume, and Ralph knew there was an unpleasant smell. When a restaurant is in operation, the smell of cheese, tomato, and the sweetness of candy is in the air. Take that away, then every bad smell from around that restaurant is picked up by the ventilation system. That ventilation system goes through the security office. All that guard would do is sit in an accumulating smell of rotten victims. I therefore think the guards, Jeremy and Mike Schmidt, were just those people. Mike Afton's absence was due to his being with family overseas. Mike was in need of time to help mend some emotional wounds he suffered following the bite of 83. The returning brother, Mike. It has been 10 years since William was burnt, and Elizabeth has been alone inside of Circus Baby, longer still for Springtrap. William, through a method unknown to us, has got a message to his son, Mike. This message draws him back from Europe and into the Fazbear Frights horror attraction. While Mike is battling hallucinations of phantom animatronics, he is at the location with Springtrap, who still has a victim trapped in the costume. As William should have been burnt in the fire of the fourth closet, the week before gives us another candidate. On page 226, Ralph, while under attack from Golden Freddy, hears a voice. You hear a voice, a warm and gentle one, a woman saying, "It's me, thank you. You did it. She'll be all right now. She's safe. She's safe." You smile and go to sleep. This woman is not Bronwyn, as Ralph knows her voice. He heard her voice in the voicemail message. This is not a child, not Cassidy, Susie, or Charlotte. This one is unknown to Ralph. I've previously gone through the idea that Ralph has been trapped in the Springlock costume. As Bronwyn occupied the Golden Freddy costume, Spring Bonnie is the next likely spot for him to go. As I've also previously made a video on the two Spring Bonnie costumes, William has stored his away after the events of the Silver Eyes. The costume that looks similar to Fredbear, with the large front teeth, red bow tie and large nose, this costume is not at the Fazbear Frights location. The one here has a smaller nose, eyelids and had a purple tie. Therefore, I would say that William's costume is not seen at this event. This would be the actual haunted Spring Bonnie costume with Ralph inside. Mike would work the week here and by the end take a piece of merchandise called a logbook and then burn the place down. The logbook will give Mike a list of the remaining animatronics. He would take it with him to his next location, Circus Baby's rental facility. In the burnt out remains of the Fazbear Frights location, Springtrap will wait, with only the memory that the guard that she faced was her eldest son, who now looks similar to her husband. Circus Baby rental. With the horror attraction reduced to rubble, Mike would gain access to a Fazbear facility that has been in operation since 1987, Circus Baby's rental. The end of the game dialogue gives us insight into Mike's purpose there. I found it. It was right where you said it would be. They were all there. They didn't recognize me at first, but then they thought I was you. The first part is likely the important part, as it seems to be the reason for him going. Many theorists have focused on Elizabeth's part. I've even heard someone alter the message to outright remove the first part, although Mike talks about it first and her second. Part 1 is likely referring to the Funtime animatronics. The "I found it" I suspect is Ballora. I think this is because William had Circus Baby, Funtime Freddy and Foxy 10 years ago at the second opening of the Circus Baby restaurant, but not Ballora. William lost her in 1983 during the opening of the first Circus Baby's pizza. So what's so special about Ballora that William would send Mike? She is an animatronic. Within the story Dance With Me, Ballora goes invisible to anyone not wearing the special Fazbear supplied glasses. The glasses would likely be the means of altering the spectrum of light to which Ballora would be projecting. Similar to an illusion disc that uses sound, Ballora uses the light version of the tech. Ballora has the ability to make herself invisible. Springtrap's body is in bad shape and mostly immobile. Therefore, Ballora would suit Springtrap as a new host body. The next part of the message covers her, Elizabeth, and I found her. I put her back together, just like you asked me to. She's free now. Mike did understand that her sister was haunting the Circus Baby animatronic. The last time William had seen Elizabeth would have been at the end of the Fourth Closet novel. Elizabeth had been off to confront Charlie, while William remained with Carlton. What was William to know about her daughter other than she wasn't with him? He may have thought that she had escaped and didn't know he had survived. So William could have told Mike that. She was not expected at the rental facility. Mike figured it out and helped her escape. One of the Candy Cadet stories about a kind man, orphans, and a burglar, I think sums up Henry's role at the rental facility. I feel that Henry is the kind man, the fun times are the orphan, and Mike is the burglar. This story, I feel, talks about the fun times being the orphans as those animatronics lost their home, the restaurant. The house of one of the 5 children is the rental facility. The promise to always come back is a reference to renting. And the burglar, well, that's Mike. When Henry came back to find the fun times gone, as well as Mike, what is Henry to believe other than Mike stole them? Then there was a knock at the door. Telling the story like this puts Henry's life for the past decades as running the rental facility. He gave Mike a chance to work at the facility his father helped contribute to by making the animatronics. Now Henry felt betrayed by the loss of those animatronics. The knock is important. As we know, Mike got scooped. Where would he go? Not his family, he would spare them. His brother was gone, so back to the rental facility, back to Henry. One survivor of the rental facility is Fredbear Plush. How long did Rory last in the testing facility is unknown. Mike did find the plush during his week. That toy still contained the memories of his younger brother. When Mike sleeps, he could even dream the dreams of his brother. This, I think, is why Mike could draw Nightmare Fredbear. Mike was given Evan's dreams. Henry would need to contemplate what his life had become. He had a wife, son, and daughter. He co-owned a restaurant with his best friend, William, whose business savvy had built a company that brought animatronics to the public and would bring joy to many children. Although his invention, the spring lock, had resulted in her death by accident, his problems got worse when her son would be injured shortly after. He was there when her son was being lifted into the mouth of his creation, Fredbear. He didn't stop it. He could have done more. Henry would take in the Afton boys and look after them, but the drinking couldn't hold back what he felt. His anger could only make matters worse. Then he lost Charlotte. When William's daughter would have been announced to have been taken, he thought he could help, building a new daughter for both Charlotte and Elizabeth to start the rebuilding. It didn't last long, and Henry had to leave. Hiding away in the rental facility for decades, he buried himself in his work. Now that Mike was involved, Henry gave him the job. He owed Mike that. It didn't last only 1 week. Now what? Mike returned a changed person. What those animatronics did to him, the scooper. Now Mike could communicate to Henry the story of what William was doing. William did have plans, even after everything that had happened. Those animatronics again. It all had to end. Bring them all together and destroy them. Henry had a plan. Pizzeria Simulator. This restaurant was built to contain the fire that would destroy them all. Some of the animatronics would be delivered if unable to move on their own. For those with souls, they were lured in. Elizabeth would be the first within the remains of Scrap Baby. After being brought in, she needed to be interviewed. A series of sounds are played to try and provoke a response from the spirit. The audio recordings are made by Henry. How Henry knew to do this is unknown. We haven't heard that story yet. Elizabeth's message to her employer is, you don't really know who your employer is, do you? This should immediately tell you that Elizabeth's arrival was intentional. She knew the risks and entered anyway. The end of game speech gave us, this was a gift for us. You gather them all together in one place, just like he asked you to. The us reference is for Scraptrap, who is a withered form of Spring Bonnie. The one who told her to gather them would be Henry. Elizabeth seems unaware of how much Henry actually knew. Second to arrive is Molten Freddy. Lines such as, together again, one big happy family. This could be from the Candy Cadet story about the kind man, orphans and burglar. The reference to orphans did mean that Henry was the kind man who looked after them. As Elizabeth was not part of this group anymore, the remainder may remember the time at the rental facility. The third to be interviewed is Scraptrap. You may not recognise me at first, but I assure you, it's still me. What a deceptive calling. I knew it was a lie the moment I heard it, obviously, but it is intriguing nonetheless. Scraptrap, or Withered Spring Bonnie, is the haunted costume that has survived since the 1980s. The animatronic with the illusion disc that made its appearance back in the fourth closet was based on this form. The suit has been stored away for a long time, only recently being released in the third game while facing off against guard Mike Afton. Now badly withered, this costume is wearing the costume of William's Spring Bonnie. Both costumes are in bad shape, but together they form a body. The message of a deceptive calling seems to be a fraudulent invitation. The fourth to be interviewed is Lefty. Shh. Lefty's dialogue is simple, although important. The puppet is asleep inside of him. When Lefty enters the restaurant the same way as the others, it was Henry who sent him to collect his daughter. It should be noted that Henry doesn't seem to have had any contact with Charlotte until decades after her death. When Henry used Charlotte's Ella doll in the Charlie animatronic, he likely only saw the spirit's connection. Henry didn't move the puppet out of the abandoned restaurant. It would be likely from Mike that Henry learnt the spirit hadn't moved on and was haunting the animatronic. I find it unlikely Henry knew of his daughter's location for so many years and did not act. Mike goes through the management training and ensures all animatronics are where they're supposed to be. Henry's speech by the end would bring the others up to speed on Henry and Mike's plan. I'm afraid you've been misinformed. You are not here to receive a gift, nor have you been called here by the individual you assume, although you have indeed been called. Henry outlines that he is very much aware of their intentions, and he was likely the one to send out the invitation that lured them in. And for you, my brave volunteer, who somehow found this job listing not intended for you, although there was a way planned out for you, I have a feeling that's not what you want. I have a feeling that you are right where you want to be. Mike had been with Henry since he knocked on the rental facility door, after his scooping. Henry is aware of what Mike had gone through, what he did to his brother, the loss of his nephew, facing off with Scraptrap, and the scooping by Elizabeth. He was right where he wanted to be, with the other monsters. This place will not be remembered, and the memory of everything that started this can finally begin to fade away, as the agony of every tragedy should. This is the start of this story. The memory of everything that started this had involved Henry's Fredbear costume, and following the bite of 83, the agony shared by all involved. Mike and Henry both changed because of that event. And to you monsters trapped in the corridors, be still and give up your spirits. They don't belong to you. For most of you, I believe there is peace and perhaps more, waiting for you after the smoke clears. Although for one of you, the darkest pit of hell is open to swallow you whole. So don't keep the devil waiting, old friend. Henry is actively trying to help the spirits move on, although for his old friend, Henry has no such feelings of redemption. The responsibility of her loss and the consequences that happened to her children had haunted Henry for decades. But for her future, going quietly was not what he would wished. And for William, he's not around. He avoided this, being kept alive by Andrew in a hospital bed, living out immortality in perpetual agony. He has a future of nightmares on repeat. This ends, for all of us, in communication. Thanks for staying with me till the end. If you enjoyed the video, then leave a like to help grow the channel. To find out when new videos become available, subscribe for future content.